Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to another video. And in this video I'll be showing you how I created a simple connect 4 game in Python. So here the first thing I did was to create a list that contains the spaces for the board. So a regular connect 4 game board has 6 rows and 7 columns. So I try to visually represent that here in this list. Then the next thing here is the function that draws the board. So here I'm using a for loop to get the index and each element from the list that I have defined above. So here I'm using the enumerate function, and what that does is for each element in the list also provide the index of that element, and to use that I'll have to create two temporary variables, index and space. The index is the index of each element, and the space is just each of these little underscores here. The next thing I'm doing is to check if index plus 1 modulo 7 is not equal to 0. Why I'm doing index plus 1 modulo 7 is the first index here is 0, and if I try to divide it by 0, it is going to still give me 0, and that is not what I want when I'm trying to draw the board. So I have to add 1 to the index and also add 1 to the last element, since I'm trying to break the board. I don't want to print everything on the same line. I'm trying to break it when it gets to this final stage, and the index of this one is 6, so I have to add 1 to it to make it 7. Now I'm checking if it is not equal to 0. So if it's not the last element on the line that I want it to be, then it should print the underscore. It should print that element, then print this little separator, and I'm using this end keyword to keep it on the same line, and there's a space in between it. And if it is equal to 0, then it will just print the space without keeping it on the same line, so it takes it to a new line. So before I explain what all of these functions do, I'll have to explain how the main function works, and inside the main function all of these functions are there, so I'll be explaining them as we go on. So inside the main function, the first thing that it does is to draw the board. So it displays the empty board for the two players, then it sets a variable player equal to 1. So this is the whole while loop that runs the game continuously until there is a winner. Then I'm using a try and except statement. If any of the players enter anything that is not a number, then it doesn't just break the game, it tells the player that you have entered something wrong. So in the except statements here, I'm saying please enter a number, and I'm checking for value error. So when they enter something that is not a number, that will print out, and then the player will be able to play again. So then the next thing I'm checking is if the board is full. So this is a function called is full, and I've defined it up here. What is going on here is I'm counting the number of underscores in the list that I have defined up here, and if it is equal to 0, then it returns false, meaning that the board is full. So if it returns any number that is not 0, then the board is not full, there are still some spaces left, and then the game can keep going. But if it is full, it will just print tie game, and then nobody wins. If the board isn't full, I'll ask the user to enter depending on the column they want to play in. Then I convert it to an integer, because by default the value inputted here has to be a string. So what I'm checking next is if what the player entered is in the range of 1 and 7. So I'm using a simple shorthand here. So if 1 is less than or equal to the move, which is what the player entered, and the move is less than or equal to 7, then I'm subtracting 1 from whatever they entered, because as I explained earlier, the value of this beginning element is 0, and if they enter 1, it means that they want to play in the first column, but 1 is the second column when it comes to programming. So I have to subtract 1 from whatever they entered, so that it would correspond with the column that they want to play in. So then I declare another variable called bottom, and this is because when playing connect 4 and you drop a piece from the top, it slides down to the bottom. So this variable is just adding 35 to the new value of move. Let's look at the board again. So if the number they played is 2, So they played 2, they want to play in the second column, and after I've subtracted 1 from it, this is the column that it should be playing, and the index of this is 1. So what I'm doing is adding 35 to 1, which is 36. So the value that is stored in the bottom variable is the space where whatever their letter is will be played. Then I'm now checking if it is player 1 stone or if it is player 2 stone. So if it is player 1 stone, if player is equal to 1, then I'm running the player 1 move function, and in the player 1 move function I have 3 parameters here: bow, which is just short for board, bot, which is short for bottom, and mo, which is short for move. So if board bottom, if the last element in that column is equal to a space, and I'm checking it for every element that is directly above it, so I'm subtracting 7 from whatever the value of bottom is, and I'm doing it until it gets to the top element. So what I'm now checking is if it is a space, then it should replace whatever is there with the value of x, which is player 1's letter. Now this first if statement is checking if it is a space. So if there's no element there, then it runs all of these if statements to replace the space with the letter. So else, if it is occupied, it is now running all of these if statements. If the value of that space, of the last available space, is equal to O, or if that space is equal to X, then it replaces the value of the element directly above it with X, because when you drop, if there is something at the bottom, then it just occupies the space above it. And that is what the rest of this if statement does. Then it draws the board again with all of the new values. Then after each player has moved, I am checking if they have won. So I created 3 more functions called check rows, check columns, and check diagonal. So in the 3 functions, they are quite long, so I'm not going to explain it in detail, but what I'm just checking here is if for the check rows, what I'm checking is if 4 consecutive spaces are equal to the same letter. So if it is equal to the same letter, it just prints out that player has won. But if it is not, it checks the next 4 elements in that row. So it goes if this 4 is equal to the same letter. If it is not, then it checks the next 4 up until it finds one that is equal to the same letter. So let me just show you that it's quite a long process to write out, and the check columns and check diagonals is very similar to it. So I'm checking if check rows or check columns or check diagonals, and I'm using the or statement. So in case any one is true, then it should print player, and the value of player at that point has won. Then it breaks the loop since the player has won. So if none of this is true, then it just overwrites the value of player to 2, and then it goes back to the beginning. It checks if the board is full, then it asks for inputs, and since the value of player is 2 at that point, since we have overwritten it, it prints out player 2 entered column 1 to 7, and then it does everything here. And since player is equal to 2, or since player is not equal to 1 at this point, it runs this second else statement, and that is just doing the same thing as here. It runs the player 2 move, then it checks if player 2 has won, but instead of checking if each element or each 4 elements is equal to X, it uses O, and if any of these ones is true, it prints player 2 has won. It breaks. If player 2 hasn't won, then it just converts the player value back to 1 so that player 1 can play. So that is basically everything that is working in this Connect 4 game. So now I'm just going to give you some sort of gameplay to show you how it works. You can see the board here after it draws it from the function, and it prints out player 1 enter the column 1 to 7. I want to play in the first column, so I'm going to enter 1. So it does everything, and you can see the value of X, which is my value, player 1's value. It drops down to the last element there in that column. Now it converts the value of player to 2, and then it prints player 2, enter the column. Player 2 can play anywhere else, and it can just keep going until there is a winner. You can see that there are 4 consecutive elements that are the same in this column, so it prints player 1 has won and it broke the game. So that is basically how this game works. There will be a link to this source code in the description so that you can check it out and try it for yourself. Other than that, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you learned something from it, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.